So I wanted to do my first case study video on the Challenger disaster, and I'm going to start off with the events that led to the disaster. So on January 28, 1986, NASA launched the Space Shuttle Challenger from Kennedy Space Station in Florida. In what was intended to be an historic and inspiring mission, it turned out to be a disaster. On board, there were 7 astronauts, including most notably Christa McAuliffe. She was a schoolteacher participating in NASA's Teacher in Space program. Millions of Americans, including school children, watched the launch live on television. But just 73 seconds after liftoff, the shuttle disintegrated midair, killing the entire crew on board. Investigations later revealed that the cause of the explosion was a mechanical failure in the shuttle's right rocket booster. Specifically, it was 2 rubber O-rings, which were meant to seal the joint and prevent hot gases from escaping the rocket, which failed due to abnormally cold temperatures the night before. Before the launch, temperatures had dropped below freezing, causing the O-rings to stiffen and lose their sealing capabilities. Roger Boyce-Jolly, an engineer at Morton Thiokol, a contractor responsible for the solid rocket boosters, voiced very strong concerns about the O-rings' performance in such cold temperatures. Boyce-Jolly and other engineers advised against launching. Initially, Morton Thiokol's engineering team supported the delay, as rightfully so. However, after pressure from NASA and internal management, the company reversed its recommendation, and NASA, facing political and public expectations and seeking to avoid another delay, expected the launch approval despite the unresolved technical warnings that were mentioned. Shortly after the launch, though, hot gases escaped through the failed joint. For a brief moment, aluminum slag had sealed the gaps, but as the shuttle passed through a high altitude jet stream, it experienced intense lateral forces that dislodged the seal. Flames had breached the external fuel tank, causing a rapid structural failure. The shuttle broke apart, resulting in a catastrophic explosion and loss of life and the mission. This disaster wasn't just caused by broken hardware, but it was caused by a broken decision-making process. First, there was groupthink. That's when a group of people, especially in high-pressure environments, start ignoring different opinions because they don't want to seem difficult or get into any trouble. Some engineers were clearly worried, but they backed off or stayed quiet once Morton Thiokol's executives decided to give NASA what it wanted. There was also a lot of pressure from above. NASA had made big promises to the public about how the shuttle would be a quick, reliable way to travel to space. But by 1986, that wasn't happening. Launches were being delayed, support from Congress and the public was slipping. They didn't want to delay again, especially not with so many people watching live in America. Morton Thiokol also had a lot at stake. They didn't want to disappoint NASA, who was their main and biggest customer. There were real fears that it was if said no to the launch, the contract might be at risk. So some company leaders ignored their own engineers and gave NASA the answer they wanted to hear. Another big issue was diffusion of responsibility. There were so many people involved, NASA managers, engineers, contractors, and so on, that it became so easy for each person to assume someone else would speak up or stop the launch. That kind of mindset is dangerous because it means nobody feels fully accountable for what could happen. But at the end of the day, it wasn't about one bad choice. It was about a culture where the truth got pushed aside for convenience, image, and pressure. So what are the key takeaways here? We first need to be brave enough to speak up, even if we're the only one. Roger Boyce-Jolly did speak up, and he was right, but his voice was ignored. If you know something is unsafe or unethical, you can't just quietly disagree, but you need to document your concerns and make sure they are heard. Second, companies and organizations need to build a culture where speaking up is not punished, but encouraged. People in leadership need to actually listen to the people doing the technical work. When someone says this could be dangerous, that needs to be taken seriously, no matter how convenient it is. Third, we have to be aware of psychological traps like groupthink. If everyone seems to be going along with something that feels wrong, ask questions. Don't assume they must know better. Don't be afraid to be the person in a room who disagrees. And finally, take personal responsibility. Even in a big organization, your decision does matter. It's easy to think this isn't my call or someone else will fix it, but that's exactly how disasters happen, especially something like this. If something doesn't feel right, it's your job to speak up and say something. The Challenger disaster wasn't just a tragedy, but it was also a lesson. It showed what happens when communication breaks down and ethics are pushed aside. If you want to avoid more mistakes like this, you need to be more than just technical skills. You need to have honesty, courage, and be a person who puts truth and safety before image, deadlines, and money. Thank you.